So, players are ready. We are expecting to see a very grindy game, a very grindy matchup from both Era side and Bravo Showstopper side. In context, Bravo in general has the tools to be a very aggressive hero, but compared to its more traditional counterpart, which is Victor, Anastasios Papagianis might struggle a bit more with this matchup because he doesn't have the tools in his deck to actually go for these very high value plays. So he doesn't have this class, he won't be able to get this card advantage. So all this game is going to be about, it will be, will Bravo manage to find the correct threats and keep the pressure up to be able to lock the Era player out of the game, or will the Ira manage to slow down the game and enter that really annoying Kodachi into Kodachi lock into threaten Mask of Momentum every other turn and really make it hard for Anastasios Papagianis to be able to actually block out and efficiently defend while presenting an annoying enough threats. So let's head into the game. So Kostakis on this game really wants the game to slow down. He wants for both players not to overdo themselves. He doesn't want to head into a game where Anastasios will be able to hit these back-to-back big threats. He just wants the game to be slow so he can chip damage with the Kodachis, he can attack with all these annoying breakpoints. He wants to threaten Mask of Momentum, to disrupt the momentum as much as possible from Bravo Showstopper. Kostakis really wants, it really depends also on how prepared Kostakis is, because we might not have any gravies at the top 8, but Gravy Bones has been a menace in the past few events in Nationals. Gravy Bones is a deck that is in everyone's mind while deck building, so it's really important to see if Kostakis has enough defensive tools in his list in order to be able to actually defend efficiently the back-to-back dominates from Bravo Showstopper. On the other hand, Anastasios could be in a really nice situation because it's no longer the case like it was a few years back where every single deck used to run a huge amount of defense reactions. Ira is a bad example. Anastasios is definitely not super happy about having to face an Ira this early in the top 8. But there is a very good chance that Kostakis is not super equipped to face off against Anastasios Papagianis. And that could definitely give him the edge because, again, the only bad thing with playing a very defensive ninja is that your equipment are one-time use. If Kostakis Christos needs at some point to block with Mask of Momentum or needs to block with his 2-block gear, that means he will no longer have access to that equipment for the rest of the game, and that's something Anastasios really is looking for, because Anastasios is not playing a fatigue list. I mean, the first thing that comes to mind when you are witnessing a Bravo play at the spot is that Bravo could be in a fatigue strategy with Rampart, with heals, with a lot of defense reactions. Anastasios is the traditional aggressive Bravo player. Anastasios wants to slam threats back to back and push Kostakis into a corner where he won't have the time to slow the game down and do these annoying lines that are really hard for Anastasios to block with Kodachis and threatening hit effects and threatening Mask of Momentum triggers. So I'm really excited to see what's going to happen. Also, remember that yesterday we saw Anastasios Papagianis play, and Anastasios Papagianis is running the OG boots. He's not running flexors. So that could be annoying in that matchup because Ira is one of Ira is one of the decks that could really make great use of the quicken token that Anastasios might be forced at some point to give for free to Kostakis. It's also super important to note here, will Kostakis go all the way? Will Kostakis even attempt to fatigue Anastasios? Will he increase his deck size? Will he try to fully block most of the threats for Anastasios Papagianis? So, because Guardians, that's a problem that they always had. They have a very specific amount of threats. So, could Kostakis potentially try to block out the threats while playing a tempo game, or will he simply try to disrupt the pattern of Anastasios Papagianis and keep annoying his hand, keep annoying his sequencing, not allowing Anastasios Papagianis to keep that extra card for activating the dominate effect from his hero ability. So I'm really excited to see what's going to happen here, and I'm really excited to see what these players have packed for this specific matchup. Because again, these are both some heroes that I don't think were on anyone's radar for this tournament. I don't think it was in anyone's radar. Bravo, Showstopper, or Ira. You know, these are decks that were not in the top spots of the meta game, so it could potentially be in a spot where neither of those players has enough experience to actually deal with each other. I'm super interested and I'm super happy to see Anastasios actually returning back to Bravo, because Anastasios used to be a very aggressive player. When Anastasios started a few years back, he started by only playing Bravo Showstopper in a metagame where you could actually play Bravo Showstopper. But for in the last few years, Anastasios has been playing mainly aggressive deck. He was into Osilio, he was into Aurora. He had good performances with this very aggressive type of heroes, and that's his mindset. Again, probably in this matchup. I'm really excited to see that Anastasios is running the Titan's Fist and the Shield. To be honest, I was not expecting that. I was expecting Anastasios to want to not be so defensively, but apparently he wants to have enough equipment so he won't get disrupted enough. And we see the first turn of the game, Anastasios choosing to go first and opening the game with a red choke slam since turn 0. He knows what he needs to do this game. He doesn't care about giving Ira the big tempo of the second turn, because he knows that that's exactly what he wants. He wants to start leaking damage since turn 0. He knows that this is most likely not a fatigue matchup. He's not planning to grind the deck out of Christos Kostakis. He wants to attack his face. He wants to keep his threat up. He wants to reduce his life total as quickly as possible. And he opens with a huge lead. And that's something that we are not very familiar with now. And Bravo, again, we already talked about that even though he's a bit of a weaker hero compared to Victor in its counterpart versus the aggressive strategies, he can push damage. He can push a lot of damage. So here with Kostakis, that's something we will see a lot. Kodachi for 1, Kodachi for 2. Kodachi for 1, Kodachi for 2. I'm expecting we'll see a lot of that because Kostakis has a clock. And that clock is the life total of Anastasios Papagianis. Kostakis needs to start making Anastasios feel threatened. Kostakis needs to make Anastasios Papagianis feel that he needs to start respecting the daggers. Oh, and we see a red Sirens for 6. That's very interesting. A very interesting card for Kostakis. And rather than going for the aggressive line, he chooses to set up. He wants attack for 6. Kostakis here simply wants to present numbers and wants a bit to maintain his life total. A very interesting choice for Kostakis. So we see again the very fancy sing below from abroad to London for Anastasios, and the Mask of Momentum trigger here, it's a bit irrelevant because the card does not have go again. So Anastasios is fine with simply doing the value block of simply using the defense reaction because he wants to keep the pressure up. He wants to make Kostakis work for him in order to ask for extra cards, and here we see one of the favorite plays of all the Guardian players. Pitch 2 cards and play a Spinal Crush for 9. Spinal Crush is not the end of the world for Christos Kostakis because Ira, most of the time, it's not like it's easy for Ira to use all of the 5 cards in their hand offensively. So they need to respect that. But what Spinal Crush accomplishes most of the time is that you know the next turn will get slowed down because almost no hero that wants to go wide can actually accept the hit from Spinal Crush and still put enough pressure up. So Anastasios wants to generate some tempo by playing the Spinal Crush here. And let's see how Kostakis Christos will deal with that. Anastasios should feel pretty confident right now. He has Anastasios right now should feel pretty confident because he has a direct in arsenal. We see a double defense reaction from Christos Kostakis. So Christos Kostakis probably is patting a lot of defense reactions. It's something that we see a lot of times with Ira, so let's see what other tools he has in his arsenal. So Kostakis here was fine with using a lot of defense reaction. It is a bit annoying that most likely he will not have a third defense reaction to put in arsenal and try and set up and be prepared to deal with potentially a dominated card. So that's what Kostakis is planning to do here. Kostakis here really wants to remove at least a few cards from the hand of Anastasios Papagianis. So he won't be threatened. He wants to be proactive about the Bravo activation. And that puts Anastasios in a really weird situation because right now the defense reaction he has in Arsenal cannot cleanly block the Bittering Thorns. And if that Bittering Thorns goes through, that means that the next attack that will be triggering Mask of Momentum will have that extra 1 power, and that could potentially be out of reach for him to efficiently block. So it really depends on what Anastasios wants to do with his next turn. Does he have the threat? Does he want to activate Bravo? Will he get banished? The only problem with Ira and Mask of Momentum in general is that blocking for 5, really nice. So the only problem with Mask of Momentum in Ira in general is that Ira is a deck that packs a lot of blues. It's not like the Mask of Momentum we see from Cindra, where every card is a 3-go again or something better. So whichever card you draw from the top of your deck, you don't really mind because all of your cards are pretty much the same, are either extenders or deal a lot of damage. That's not the case with Ira. Ira has a lot of cards that most likely she won't care. She will not want to arsenal. So sometimes Mask of Momentum trigger will not be such a huge problem for Anastasios Papagianis. And we see a very clean, after a very clean block from Anastasios Papagianis, blocking the Bittering Thorns to want to make sure that Mask of Momentum will not go off. Mask of Momentum will not trigger. Kostakis probably has either a defensive card or has a 0 cost. So here we see a pain in the backside, and that's probably the card that Kostakis wanted to threaten as the third card, because the huge difference between the last attack that he used to activate Mask of Momentum, this card has natural go again. So if Anastasios wanted to let this go through, and Kostakis could potentially continue with his turn. We see a lot of equipment committed from Anastasios here, and Anastasios kept a 3-card hand. So what does this 3-card hand mean? And we see the crippling crash, and that's exactly what we were talking about, that Anastasios chose to play the crippling crash for tempo because not committing that single card in the defensive would mean that not using that card in defensive would mean that the mask of momentum would go through and a lot of damage would get pushed. So let's see here. Let's see how Christos Kostakis is forced. Christos Kostakis was in a very rough situation. He had a lot of two blocks because that's sometimes the problem. Because Christos Kostakis probably has a list that's very prepared to deal with the gravy, but having these many two blocks probably means that he is not blocking well, and he's forced to commit a lot of tempo back to Anastasios Papagianis. And that's exactly what we talked about at the beginning, that now the arms, Suko is gone. It blocked for 2 and now that's it. There is no longer equipment that Kostakis could use. And Kostakis probably is not looking to... Probably Kostakis does not want to destroy his mask of momentum this early. Oh, and here we see a debilitate with 2 floating. Oh, a blue debilitate with 2 floating. So rather than activate dominate, to simply at least threaten the arsenal. So is that a threat? Is that a bait? What does this look like? And it feels like, oh, Anastasios actually had the pummel buffing the attack up to 10. So does Christos Kostakis has the two... Does Christos Kostakis has the second defense reaction, and we see again a very fancy Fate for Scene, one of the first very nice... Oh, and the sink below as well. Christos Kostakis actually did not... It's not like he did not respect the pummel. Christos Kostakis had the tools to actually block out the pummel. He was expecting... He did respect the 2 floating out of out of Anastasios Papagianis. So, but that's another problem now. The defense reactions from Kostakis Christos are starting to run out. And that's not a very good thing, because Anastasios Papagianis hasn't activated Dominate even once for now. Oh, and Kostakis goes for the very aggressive 5 draw a card. Kostakis here probably feels that he is a bit behind in this game. He is a bit behind in tempo, he is a bit behind in the life total. And again, we discussed about this yesterday as well, that what you want to happen in a mid-range game is that you want to be the one making the decisions. And Kostakis can feel right now that Anastasios is taking all the decisions. When he wants to block, he blocks. When he wants to take some damage and do his very aggressive line, he does that. So Kostakis here needs to take a risk by activating the strike for 5 draw a card to hopefully draw a card that will be relevant in his arsenal. Also, we could have seen a very different approach to the Ira from Christos Kostakis so far, because the most common build for Ira has been to run a bunch of 0 cost blue attacks at 1 power in order to be able to use looking for a scrap. But we haven't seen any of the blue cards from Kostakis Christos yet to be 1 power cards, so Christos Kostakis could have a list that potentially even a random blue card could potentially be a decent card to Arsenal. Kostakis is not happy with that. Oh, and the instant answer with Command and Conquer and having 2 more cards in hand, that could only mean one thing. we know Anastasios Papagianis is not running any sigils, so that could only mean one thing, that probably a pummel is coming through. And Christos Kostakis chose to put a card in Arsenal out of the E-Strike draw, so that's a very rough situation. Now for Kostakis, is there anything he can do to actually play around that, or will Anastasios keep generating that amount of tempo? So we see a very clean block for 6, and another red pummel pitching the Spinal Crush. So here 4 damage goes through. Christos Kostakis loses a card from hand, loses the extra card he got from Arsenal, and he is back. All the health lead he developed over the course of this game is now almost instantly gone. And the other problem as well with this line is that Christos Kostakis will not be able to activate Mask of Momentum this turn. So again, we might see a turn from Bravo that he has all the time in the world, he has all the resources he needs to. So the only thing is, did Anastasios Papagianis, did the Bravo Showstopper draw a decent threat in order to keep maintaining that momentum? Because that's a very technical play from Christos Kostakis, where sometimes the way to counter a Guardian for doing these efficient plays is to give him more tempo that he can actually handle. But that's exactly the spot you want to be in as Bravo, because that's the only thing that Bravo is actually much stronger in an aggressive deck. So here we see an imposing visage, probably a setup turn from Anastasios Papagianis, but it's not the best line, but it's also not the end of the world for him. That probably means that he wants to he has the option of either setting up a card here and setting up a huge crippling for next turn, or he could instantly try and go and fetch a Chokeslam in order to threaten with something here at least. Oh, he just fetched the blue, so he was already happy with a red card he has in hand, probably, meaning he's just fetching a blue in order to be able to swing with a hammer. So not the worst turn from Bravo Anastasios Papagianis, but Christos Kostakis should know that something heavy is right now on Arsenal. Anastasios Papagianis had full access to his deck, and he chose to simply bring a card for resources in order to simply swing with a hammer. Let's see if Anastasios has anything else to say about this, if he could potentially have a threat in his hand. Or he actually has a Command and Conquer. Anastasios does not want to put a card in Arsenal because Command and Conquer is a card that Ira can utilize very, very well. So Christos Kostakis, Anastasios Papagianis here actually plays around the fact that the Command and Conquers from Ira are extra painful, so he does not want to put himself in a situation where he will be forced to potentially block a very weird Command and Conquer. Also, this is again a very smart technical play from Anastasios Papagianis, where Anastasios has already played 2 copies of Pummels, so expecting to draw the third one after he shuffled his deck, the chances of that are really small, so he doesn't want to choke his arsenal with a Command and Conquer for a long time. So here we see a nasty surprise and the blue. So at this point we can safely assume that Kostakis Christos is not running looking for a scrap. Kostakis Christos is running a list with the value blue cards that he doesn't mind so much to put in Arsenal, so his Mask of Momentum is way more active that way, and I'm really excited, really interested to see that type of deck building from Kostakis Christos. Oh, and here we see the Bittering Thorns, the only card he chose to keep after that devastating Command and Conquer and Pummel turn. And now Kostakis Christos is finally ready. That's how he wants to play the game. He wants to keep asking for cards out of Anastasios Papagianis. And here we see a very smart block with the Guardian boots, because he knows that most likely Kostakis will not want to waste that one resource. This is a game where every point of damage matters. So even if he has... he knows that Kostakis will want to attack with the last Kodats, but no. Kostakis actually chooses to try and set up a turn. We saw that line again from Iason yesterday, where he chose to do that as a guardian. So let's see how well will Kostakis Christos utilize that, because Kostakis needs to find the tempo. Kostakis needs to find the cards in order to come back to this game. And we see the third Command and Conquer. Does he have the Pummel? Again, did Anastasios Papagianis draw the third Pummel this early in the game? Because that would be devastating for Kostakis here. He would love to be able to block. And there he tunics up into the third Pummel. Anastasios Papagianis showing why this interaction is so good, because it's something we were not used to. The Command and Conquer Pummel is something that a lot of players in the new age of Flesh and Blood, it's almost like they've forgotten that this interaction, how powerful this interaction is. And Kostakis now is not in the same spot. Kostakis needs to commit, needs to ask for at least a few cards. So he chooses to consume his Quicken token and actually go for a Torrent of Tempo. Kostakis needs to start getting full value out of every one of his equipment and every one of his cards, because he doesn't have the luxury of waiting for the full value of his turn, because again, it feels like in this game, Kostakis has been on the back foot and hasn't recovered since. So Kostakis needs to bleed out the value, needs to reduce the life total of Anastasios Papagianis to force him to interact. The worst thing here that could happen for Kostakis is for Bravo to simply say, I take 5. Very fancy sink below. And no sink. Again, that's not very good news. When the opponent has 4 cards in hands and they don't feel like cycling anything, you know that something heavy is coming. We see a Bravo activation into Starstruck, and that's exactly the position that Anastasios Papagianis wants to be in. He dominates an attack. He can see that there is no arsenal. Kostakis has already blocked with 1 piece of equipment, so if he wants to block with an extra piece of equipment to prevent that crash effect here, that means that he will no longer have access to Mask of Momentum. And that's exactly the problem we've seen with this mid-range type of Ira. Anastasios Papagianis is not taking any breaks. He's pressing the gas full on, full throttle. He's not giving Kostakis any room to breathe here, and it feels like Kostakis cannot allow the Starstruck to go through. If that Starstruck goes through and he doesn't have a big card like a Command and Conquer or a Weakest Link, that probably means that you won't have a turn. So 5 damage goes through, so since Starstruck is now active, it means that Kostakis cannot activate or attack with any attack that has less than 5 base power. So hopefully that means that Kostakis will be able to play an attack, and he has a Sirens. Okay, that's a decent play as well. Dealing 6, healing 1. It's really annoying. I mean, with that Starstruck, Anastasios managed to gain 2 value on the defensive, because Kostakis Christos could not activate the Kodachi, could not get the extra attack, and a card is blocked. I think the card is used for block from the Anastasios Papagianis side, and Kostakis should be pretty happy with this interaction now, because removing a card from the Bravo's hand means that he probably doesn't have a huge threat. But Anastasios is super happy with this interaction, because he had a Spinal Crush, he had the perfect card to answer this. And again, Christos Kostakis needs to respect the Spinal Crush in order to have a turn. And Anastasios is fine right now. Anastasios has built quite decent life lead, so if he simply keeps up the tempo game, it could potentially mean that he has the resources he needs to end this game. Blocking with a Sensor and the Shelter from the Storm from Kostakis, so only 2 damage go through, no crash effect, but the life total of Christos Kostakis is diminishing. It starts to go really low, so when these big damage turns from Bravo start to add up, and all the disruption starts to add up, Kostakis could be forced into a situation where he needs to block every single random 8 power card that Bravo throws at him, and that's not a position you want to be first. As the IRA, you want to be the one that actually pulling the opponent into being forced to block all the time, and not the other way around. So we see a commitment from some for some equipment for Anastasios to prevent the mask of momentum, and Kostakis. Kostakis needed that to be a bit earlier. He could be a bit late because Anastasios Papagianis still has access to a lot of equipment. And that could potentially mean that if in a very specific turn Anastasios simply wants to keep every single card in his hand, he could potentially reset the Mask of Momentum with only committing equipment, and that's something that Kostakis is not very happy with because his life total is already so low. And here we see simply an 8 power card with not such a relevant hit effect being used versus the Ira. That crash effect will prevent Mask of Momentum trigger, but the most annoying part is that if Kostakis takes this hit, that probably means that he won't have the resources to. He doesn't have the life to actually tank this hit. So here we see the hit back from Kostakis after blocking the attack from Bravo Showstopper and threatening simply Sirens. So finally, after all this time, Anastasios Papagiannis has an off turn, has a turn where he is not threatening a lot of damage. So here Kostakis wants to keep threatening the life total after that small hammer attack from Anastasios. Actually, Kostakis managed to find the time, actually managed to find the tempo he needs, and pitching a defense reaction is not the best of the world. Just making sure that the life totals are correctly depicted right now. So weakest link coming down for 6. So Kostakis here really wants this game to slow down. Kostakis finally is in a position where the game goes the way he wants to go. He wants the game to slow down. He wants the life total of Anastasios to be getting chipped by the Kodachis. He wants to be asking cards to potentially threaten Mask of Momentum. Though Anastasios at this spot, Anastasios at this spot knows that there is no real Mask of Momentum trigger. So at that situation, it simply reveals the hand and shows Starstruck from Anastasios. So something that we are not very familiar with, again, with the newest stage of Flesh and Blood. So Tunic into pitching to blues into Starstruck, throwing a huge 10 power card towards the face of Christos Kostakis. And Kostakis now needs to respect that, needs to commit at least 2, maybe even a third card, because right now it starts being in a situation where Kostakis' life total could be relevant. So 3 cards get asked, Kostakis only takes 1 damage and will start chipping back. So Kostakis doesn't mind too much that interaction, and really that shows the strength of the IRA hero, because he simply had 3 blues and a double trouble, and with that card, with this card, he still was able to leak a lot of damage to not allow the Bravo player to efficiently block, while even blocking well. But the only problem that with Kostakis is that Anastasios still has the luxury of choosing if he wants to be on the aggressor or if he wants to cash in some value, because even losing at least 1 value, even getting chipped for 1 for this Kodachi this turn, Anastasios Papagianis still has the life lead and the block from equipment to actually manage to choose when he wants to do that very big aggressive turn. So a card has been parked in Christos Kostakis' arsenal for some time now. So Anastasios Papagianis could start speculating that this could be a defense reaction, but it could also be a threat that Christos Kostakis did not have the time to block. So Anastasios simply cashing in the value for the quicken in order to get the value now that he can, because Anastasios knows that his life total will start becoming relevant quite soon. So in here we see a Rouse of the Ancients. That's not the card that Christos Kostakis wanted to see. And we see a snag! Wow, a snag coming from the side of Christos Kostakis. A snag versus a Bravo, preventing, fully blocking the Rouse of the Ancient into a dominated chokeslam. Very interesting line, very good studying of the list of Anastasios Papagianis. Knows that he wants to be aggressive, notes that at some point the Rouse of the Ancients will get played because Bravo might be able to generate a lot of tempo. So Kostakis is actually running a single snag, I guess, in his deck to completely counter this specific line is very important. And now Christos Kostakis can smell the end game. Christos Kostakis can smell the fact that this game is coming to a closure. He doesn't want to threaten Mask of Momentum anymore. Mask of Momentum won't be relevant quite soon. What's relevant right now is to threaten Anastasios Papagianis' life because he wants to force Bravo into a position where he cares about his life total, where he won't be able to simply let every single attack go through. And will this generate enough tempo for Kostakis? Oh, we see Kodachi into a crouching target, and that could only mean one thing. Christos Kostakis is planning to do a huge amount of damage, but Anastasios Papagianis probably has the life total to tank this, or will be Christos Kostakis the first one to actually threaten lethal here? Anastasios Papagianis still has 4 points of block with equipment, 5 if you count Tunic as well. So he could potentially, if he has a very aggressive hand, he could potentially keep every single card. There is no way that Christos Kostakis can threaten 17 more damage. So takes the extra one from the Crouching Tiger, and Christos Kostakis closes the combat chain, plays that double trouble. And now attacks with a second Kodachi for 4 this time, and then another attack with 2 floating. Christos Kostakis finally managed to pull off this big offensive turn. Is it too late though? Is it too late for Kostakis? Will he be able to answer the other threat? And the sensor attacking for 8. He could potentially completely cripple the next turn from Anastasios Papagianis if he guesses correctly. Looks like Anastasios will not respect the sensor. Having a 2-card hand means that there are not many cards that he could have, and maybe Anastasios could potentially simply planning to swing with a hammer either way. So Anastasios Papagianis could potentially here simply do that. And we have a gentleman's agreement. Anastasios Papagianis simply declared his intent to attack with hammer, so Christos Kostakis didn't need to take all the time to think what are the potential 1-card plays from Anastasios. And now Kostakis is finally in the position he wants to be in. The Bravo player only has 7 more life to work with, and that's the position where Christos Kostakis wants to be in. Christos Kostakis wants to have Bravo on the ropes into a weakest link for 6. If Kostakis manages to arsenal a defense reaction now, there are no longer any command and conquers. If he has a defense reaction here to be prepared for the go all-in line from Anastasios Papagianis, that could probably mean the game. Anastasios Papagianis really needs to start counting the defense reactions from the side of Christos Kostakis, but we have seen a few defense reactions being pitched, and because this game has been so fast, I don't think we have reached the second cycle stage yet. So we are still in the first cycle, so it really all comes down on what's the amount of defense reaction that the IRA deck runs, but most of the time that's an insane number, like 9 defense reaction we've seen. We've seen Sink Belows, we've seen Flick Flags, we've seen a lot of defense reactions. And Anastasios Papagianis right now is in a really rough situation because if he does not have a threat, if he does not have a relevant threat to maintain that, there are not enough, he doesn't have enough time to keep taking these Kodachis. Kostakis can sense that all these annoying breakpoints are starting to add up. A really rough spot right now for Anastasios because we've seen a lot of Command and Conquerors being played. I think we've seen all the Spinal Crashes being played. So Anastasios Papagianis does not have a lot more threats to actually generate the tempo with. So at some point he will need to go for the aggressive line to put a closure to this game, because if he simply keeps trading life, that could potentially mean that he won't have the luxury of not blocking the Kodachis anymore. Christos Kostakis showing a masterful display of a matchup that's traditionally very good for Ira. And we see here a masterful display from Christos Kostakis showing that even in a good matchup for him, that even though if things could not go so well, that Ira still has the tools, still has the game plan of chipping away the life total of Anastasios Papagianis and blocking efficiently. We've seen so many devastating turns go through for Anastasios Papagianis here. Okay, Anastasios apparently wants to go for the kill. Anastasios needs to take a risk. Anastasios cannot wait any longer. He is about to take 4 damage going down to 2. That could mean only one thing. He needs to lock Kostakis out of the game. Going down to 2 means that he doesn't have the luxury of blocking Kodachis any longer. He needs to start respecting every single Kodachi that comes to his way. And 3 blues could only mean one thing: activating Bravo, pitching 2 blues for a creeping crash, and that's where it all comes down to. Does Kostakis have a defense reaction in Arsenal? Can he actually block this attack? Can he actually prevent the crippling crash from going off and completely devastating his turn? And at this stage, if Kostakis has a defense reaction in Arsenal and simply blocks for 7, if he keeps a single card could potentially mean that Kodachi for 1 and Kodachi for 2 could at least ask for a lot of equipment, even though he takes a decent amount of damage. And there are not many threats left in the Bravos deck. Does he have a defense reaction? Does he have a defense reaction? He has a defense reaction. He does not have a defense reaction. So he needs to take 8 points of damage. Go down to 8 points of damage and go down to 2. They are on an equal footing. Both of these cards get discarded. And that's where all it comes down to. Did Kostakis actually manage to keep something aggressive? Will he manage to ask for at least a few cards out of the hand of Anastasios Papagianis? Oh no, that's a 3-2 again. That could mean that Anastasios could simply block with the equipment and keep every single card in his hand. And now Anastasios knows that there is no defense reaction in the arsenal of Kostakis. And it resets. And now it comes down to this. Activating Bravo. Attacking for another crippling off the top. Does Kostakis has a way out of this? When faced off with the 11 dominate. Or is is it enough? And Kostakis does not have anything, and that's game. Anastasios Papagianis goes for the win and manages to move into the top 8. Anastasios cannot believe the fact that he actually managed to win this game. So what a great display of a mid-range gameplay we saw here. We saw Bravo keeping the threats back to back. So even though he knows it's a very bad matchup for him, that the Ira could block most of the time, he actually managed to find the correct sequence of cards and find the correct threats in order to be able to lock the Ira out of the game, not giving the time for Ira to set up his defense reactions in Arsenal and block efficiently his defensive cards. These Command and Conquer spammers have been the MVP for Anastasios in this game. So we are moving now to top 4. We will be streaming every game ever since, and I will be really soon back with the bracket, so stay tuned. And we are back. So, our top 8 being Arachne Marionette, Cindra, Sleepy, Kano, Dasayo, Jarl, Bravo, and Ira. And for the quarterfinals, for the semifinals, we have Cindra, Kano, and the Guardian Mirror. So, we will be beginning with the Guardian Mirror. We will be dealing with the slower, more grindy game. We have already seen this game yesterday, and this is going to be a very slow, grindy game that we're expecting both players to go back and forth. Let's see if Iason has managed to gain any information or any insight in the matchup, and let's see if it changes anything between the match they're playing yesterday. Hopefully Iason might could potentially get a rematch and gain his money back, or will he still lose to the slightly unfavored matchup of Bravo into Jarl? So in a very few minutes we will be back with the semi-finals for the Greek Nationals 2025. So we are back. We are back for the semifinals of Greek Nationals 2025. We will be seeing the Bravo versus Jarl matchup first. So we had a game between these two players yesterday, and it felt that Bravo was in a very dominating position most of the game. It was really hard for Jarl to deal with all these threats. It was way easier for the Jarl deck to brick a bit, and it was very hard. It was very easy for the Jarl deck to brick. So sometimes he had some not so efficient turns, and the command and conquer Pummel line again was very strong. Iason yesterday did not have on the correct timings the stone's responses to prevent cards like Tirasander, etc. So I'm really excited to see what the rematch between these players is going to look like. I'm really excited to see what the rematch of these two players is going to look like. So I am expecting Anastasios to go first. I mean, on the Swiss round where they played versus each other, Iason won the title and chose to go first in order to find some of these turn zero setup cards that Jarl has access to. So, and also we've seen that Anastasios really likes going first to push that extra bit of damage towards the beginning of the game. I think the game will come down again to the point where will Jarl manage to find his smaller plays, his great two-card plays while blocking efficient to generate enough tempo during the game so he will be the aggressor, or will again Bravo start being the aggressor, start being the dominating deck and never letting go until it's too late for the Jarl. So I think even though that this is a Guardian Mirror that again this game probably won't go to fatigue. I mean, Anastasios is packing a lot of extenders. Anastasios is packing a lot of very aggressive cards. So we have seen Zealous play the Rouse of the Ancients. We have seen the Starstrucks, the Creeplings, the Tirasanders. I mean, it's really hard for Jarl to correctly block all of these cards, but in the Jarl deck, his deck list has the answers. I mean, he runs a lot of D-reacts, he has the stone's responses, he has respected the mirror match. If the game grounds out a lot, Iason is running a single copy of Remembrance, so he could potentially get himself into a situation where Bravo could potentially run out of threats, or on the other hand, he could be a bit faster than Bravo. He could find this way more efficient plays because Felling and Plowonder are two cards that are very strong on their own. There are two card plays that Bravo does not have access to that. But the problem is, will Iasonas find the defensive decomposed cards fast enough on potentially a larger deck size, or will again he be stuck with these non-active failings in his hand, where he will be most likely forced to either block with them or play them without getting the full effect. So I'm really excited to see that. And after that, we will be watching Cindra versus Kano matchup. I'm expecting that to be really fast. I don't think we will have any more breaks for now. So players currently are starting the deck list of opponent. I mean, again, top 8 is being open deck list. They have full information for the opponent's deck, and obviously the rounds are timed, so they have time, and hopefully they will have the luxury of taking the time to think their lines, because I'm expecting again we'll see a decently long game. I think it always comes down to the same thing, and pretty much that has been the story for Anastasios in this tournament, and that will he have the threats on the correct timings? Will he have his threats lining up on turns where the opponent is not really threatening to do a lot? Will he start building up this momentum where he can go from back to back heavy attacks, and then when he gets to the point where the opponent is left with no arsenal, where the opponent does not have the luxury of extra resources to keep a defense reaction or in arsenal to play around the dominate effect, to start activating the Bravo hero power to get this massive hit effects through like Starstruck and Crippling. So again, I'm not expecting Anastasios to be breaking again any sideboard cards for the specific matchup. I don't think he runs any other big attacks because probably that's the luxury of playing Bravo start of the show, that Bravo Showstopper, because that the core cards of your deck are already in this type of matchup huge threats. Starstruck simply being a 7 cost 10 power card with a hit effect that the opponent cannot simply ignore is relevant. Crippling Crush is the MVP probably in this type of matchup. So, and we've seen Anastasios managing to survive that whole menace of Gravies and the Verdances and all these anti-Guardian, anti-mid-range strategies, and actually surviving that and reaching the top tables in a bracket with a very aggressive mid-range strategy like Bravo Showstopper could potentially mean that he's locked in. He could be locked in to actually claim the Greek national champion for 2025 with Bravo nonetheless. So Iason, on the other hand, really wants to survive this matchup because whether Cindra or Kano are paired into him next round, he's well equipped to deal with his decks. So it will, for Iason is facing some really hard matchups right now at Bravo and potentially a Cindra. He would be really happy if he had to face a Cindra in the finals. But if the Kano goes through from the other bracket, he will have in him. He will be looking for another very hard match. I think it's a very interesting bracket because you have the Guardians on the one side, and on the other side you have the Kano that just rains fire down the Arachne and potentially now Cindra. So we could potentially see Angelos Maxilaris managing to go all the way because. Again, Angelos Maxilaris with Kano was the finalist last year, so he could be ready, he could be out for blood this year to actually try and go all the way. So, in this tournament, I think the thing I didn't expect the most how the games worked out was that the Gravy players could not actually survive the onslaught of the aggressive decks. I mean, the Gravy players never, throughout this whole tournament, never went to the upper brackets, never had these X0 scores to start facing off the Guardians that were preying upon the Cindras and the Azaleas, and they were preying upon all these more aggressive and fair strategies. So, if I'm being honest, I was 100% sure that we could potentially have a Gravy at the top 8 because it's such a powerful deck. But the Guardians now are having a blast. There is no deck that they have a really hard matchup into. And let's see that the take of Iason as that playing Jarl as a Guardian most likely means that he wants to increase his chances into Gravy. But right now there are no Gravies. The decks that are left in the bracket are an aggressive deck with both of these Guardians are in a very good position. They have to face a Guardian Mirror and potentially a Kano. So did the commitment from Iason to actually bring Jarl, to bring a deck that can increase his fighting chance into Necro, into Gravy Bones, will it pay off and will he actually manage to do the most efficient lines compared to the Bravo, or will the OG Bravo manage to establish dominance and show that in a world of Guardians, Bravo is the king in facing off strategies like this? So we had a small sneak peek at the list of each player. So Anastasios Papagianis packs a lot of blues. So he most likely, just like we've seen in the other games, he won't have a hard time getting the resources he needs to actually go for these big threat plays and pushing the damage. On the other hand, the Iason has increased. Most of the time in Jarl lists we see 30 to 35 blues in the most heavy decks, and the Iason is in a bit in the between. He runs on 33 blues, which is pretty relevant, but the huge problem with Jarl compared to a more traditional Guardian like Bravo or potentially Victor is that all of these elemental cards don't block so well. I mean, the Fruits of the Forest, he is forced to run a few cards that do not get that full block value. So, moving on to the game, the players have finished sideboarding and we are now preparing to start round one. Anastasios has the opportunity of choosing whether he wants to go first or second. And I'm really excited to see how will he navigate that, because again, Jarl is an Earth hero, and if Bravo has a dominate on turn 0, that's great news, but it could potentially also mean that it helps Kouvakas Iason build his engine, build his Earth engine, because in the last game we saw yesterday, in that matchup, it was really important that Jarl did not have the time to actually set up. Jarl did not have the time to set up his Earth cards in graveyard and decompose and start playing the very unfair cards like Plow Under or Felling. So equipment somewhat to be expected from Kouvakas side. He's running Providence, he's running obviously the Elemental Arms Tunic and Flexors, and that was a great read from Anastasios Papagianis in general, because Flexors are not so easy to get full value or to get efficient value in a Guardian matchup, because at most the Guardian player is going to attack twice, and even if he does, effectively you use the blue or yellow card to block for 4. It's not like he gets that much out of his equipment, where on the other hand, Anastasios Papagianis with the OG Guardian boots could potentially block an annoying hit effect, could potentially block a dominated attack like a dominated Mangle. So, Anastasios apparently chose to take the first turn, as expected. Taking up Tunic, we obviously see him, like we did yesterday, playing with Anathos, rather than the small hammer and the shield, because he knows he will need to swing with his hammer a lot. So activating Bravo to get rid of a blue, and will he attack? He will actually attack. He's not even choosing. Oh, and Anastasios Papagianis, I was completely wrong. He is running the Red Thunderquake. He is prepared. He's even more prepared to face off against these slower strategies. And Kouvakas here already is not enjoying that. Is not enjoying the fact that he, in a very grindy game, will begin the game at a lower life total. And I don't think the Earth card in graveyard is an advantage big enough to actually mitigate that effect. Oh, and he has a Stone's Response! Kouvakas with the opening of Stone's Response, still taking 3 damage. If Anastasios Papagianis effectively did not arsenal a card, did not make the 3 Thunderquakes in order to leak only 3 damage, Kouvakas Iason should be really happy with this interaction. Unfortunately, Iasonas did not have a second blue, apparently, because he couldn't overpitch to play the full effect of the Stone's Response and potentially completely negate this attack. Oh, and we see Kouvakas holding an Oakenold, okay, and he's pitching for an imposing Visage. Kouvakas this time wants to perform his game plan. He doesn't want to engage with Bravo in a fair Guardian fight. He wants to utilize the fact that his attack actions, his card, interact a lot with Anastasios' equipment. So he is fine taking a turn off, giving him back full tempo in order to simply start his engine going, start having the relevant hit effects of Mangle and potentially Frozen. Because getting rid of the tunic from Bravo means that he will not be able to do these efficient lines of pitch a blue into Command and Conquer, get tunic, use Pummel, or pitch a blue or pitch 2 blues and play a 7 cost attack. And we see another defense reaction being committed really early from Kouvakas Iason. That's most of the time not your favorite thing to do. You really want to keep this card in your deck during most stages of the game, mainly because it's a double element card. It's both an earth and an ice card, and you really enjoy fusing or using the arms with that card. But Kouvakas probably did not want to sacrifice too much tempo for doing that. He wanted to keep the game up because he knows, Kouvakas already knows that he's a bit in the back foot. He took a small hit at turn 1, and then he lost his first real turn of the game to actually set up the -1 counter on the Tunic. So he cannot wait any longer. So he cannot do simply the line of just waiting to get the full value of his card, because he has the knowledge from the previous game that this game will most likely not go to fatigue. Anastasios is not planning to go on fatigue. Anastasios is not aggressively pitch stacking. Anastasios wants to simply keep hammering down the Jarl until he can no longer defend, because he knows as a traditional guardian he's packing way more threats, he's packing way more gas than the traditional Jarl deck. Okay, it looks like Anastasios only chose to block with a single card in order to hit back with a Star Strike. Okay, and that's exactly what we were talking about, that Bravo wants to keep these big threats. Simply the fact that he is playing this huge threat most of the time is generating so much tempo, because the Jarl deck does not have access to a card that's a 3 card for 10. The Jarl deck does not have access to a card that's a 3 card for 11, like Crippling Crush. So simply the fact that Jarl can do something like this is pretty important. So we finally see the line from Kouvakas as to do the roleplay, and that's one of the very few strengths that finally Jarl can play into his strengths. Finally, Jarl can play into the fact that he runs way more smaller attacks, and these smaller attacks are, he has way more access to attacks that can get pummeled. So effectively, this feels like a 2 card command and conquer into pummel, and a Frostfang into a pummel is a very, very devastating turn for the Bravo side, because again, in the mid-range mirror, you want to be the one that actually makes the decision. You want to be the one that decides when the game goes aggressive and when the game goes defensive. And by forcing 2 cards out of the hand of Anastasios Papagianis, he's not making any decision. Kouvakas is not giving him any room. So, after all that disruption, we simply see an Anathos 4/4 get swinged towards Kouvakas. So we finally see a carapace from the side of Kouvakas Iasonas. This game is completely different from the game we witnessed on Swiss. Now the first decompose is active. Now that the first decompose is active, that probably means that now his failings, the failings from Kouvakas are going to be active. And in this game also, he preemptively has blocked with his arms, meaning that if he's missing a single earth card at any point to activate the failing of the crown, he could simply block with the arms to get the second earth in graveyard. So Kouvakas is in a much better position during this game compared to the game we've seen on Swiss. Things are working way better for him now compared to the game we have seen on Swiss. So I'm really interested to see, will the momentum of Bravo be disrupted? Is his playstyle and his deck all about doing these very aggressive lines and keeping the tempo up, or will he manage to actually overcome this and potentially change his strategy a bit and potentially go back to a strategy with Bravo where we're expecting a more mid-range strategy? So a command and conquer heading towards Kouvakas as well. Let's see what he wants to do. He knows that there is no pummel going through, but he probably doesn't want to commit too many cards. And again, that's a good point. Kouvakas committed a lot of resources here. Kouvakas Iason was forced to use the Crown of Providence, which is not great because that means that when the dominate attacks start happening, it might not be easy for him to block them. But being a guardian and having these heavy defense reactions could potentially mean that he's not super afraid of that, and he'd much rather have a very good turn here rather than try and set up for the later stages of the game. But can Kouvakas actually use his full hand now? Does he have the extender required to actually cash in the value of the 5-card hand he has just generated for himself? We can see that he has a failing on the crown in his hand, and that's probably the reason why he chose to block with the arms equipment, because he didn't have the second earth card. And we simply see a failing of the crown being played. That's probably not what Kouvakas was hoping for. He probably didn't plan of keeping this huge card in hand, this huge hand, to simply play a failing of the crown. But he has kept a blue and another card. Does he has a pummel? Is Kouvakas going to do the dream of every Earth player of playing a failing for the crown into a pummel? And the most technical play versus Failing of the Crown, especially in these types of matchup, which is simply block. Failing of the Crown is a specific card. It generates a huge amount of value. It generates a huge amount of tempo. So blocking a lot of times the Failing of the Crown means that you're not expected to get hit by that again, but Kouvakas Iasonas again in a very nice spot to actually have something to do. That has been probably one of the biggest problems with Jarl in general. The fact that Jarl cannot easily translate the 4 and 5 card hands into any type of value. But here, seeing these imposing visage, they have been quite well timed from Kouvakas because now he can set up and give the -1 counter and still attack, and that should be a good spot for Iasonas Kouvakas. It's not like the -1 counter accomplishes much, but it effectively dealt 2 points of damage, so using the extra 2 cards for even 2 points of damage effectively, it's quite relevant in these very slow grind games. And again, Kouvakas having the information for how this game played out yesterday is that he he knows that this game most likely will not go to fatigue. He's not in a spot yet where he cares about removing extra cards from his hand, because simply he knows what all this matchup is about is disrupting the tempo from his opponent. We've already seen from the Anastasios Papagianis blocking with a single crippling. That was not the case yesterday. No cripplings have been used for blocking yesterday, and that was probably one of the reasons why Kouvakas was such in a back foot, where now, where he can actually present the threats, where he can actually disrupt the sequencing out of Anastasios Papagianis, is giving him a way better chance. I mean, even though Jarl is a guardian and he is the disruptor, and most of the time you want to be disrupting versus the aggressive decks, Bravo in this matchup, especially the way Anastasios Papagianis wants to approach this matchup. He wants to be the aggressor, he wants to be the aggressive deck. He doesn't enjoy being forced to interact with cards out of his hand. He wants to be the one making the decisions. On the fruits for an aggressive Fruits of the Forest discard, that's very good for two things. The first reason is that he gets an extra card in Arsenal, and now he could have potentially baited the fact that the Command and Conquer could be coming towards the side of Anastasios Papagianis. And here we see, okay, Bravo now shows why it's such an interesting deck. Bravo now shows that, okay, since his tempo plan is not working, he will attempt to try and go for the pitch stack. It feels like this game has a completely different momentum to the game we've seen on Swiss yesterday. And now Bravo wants to gain the tempo, wants to give opportunities to Jarl to do things, because he knows that if this game drags out and if he can set up these very strong turns with crippling towards the later stages of the game, he will be still the one managing to pull off these huge threats. So now, okay, achieve quest number 1 has been accomplished for Jarl. The game has slowed down to a point where he's not getting hammered down every single turn. That's a very good thing. So, but the problem is, will Jarl manage to find the threats to actually threaten the life total of Bravo? Because since Anastasios Papagianis now decided, okay, I will not play the aggressor game, I will not play this game, we will play a fair mid-range game where we both block and I will not aggressively take damage to keep pressuring you for all eternity. But the question is, will Jarl manage to find the plays that actually can threaten the life total of Bravo, or will Bravo still manage to efficiently block, do these trades, and when we reach that second cycle status, to completely overwhelm the Jarl with these split-starting attacks? So Anastasios Papagianis could potentially want to block. I think we've seen a defense reaction from Anastasios Papagianis' hand. So it's a really tricky situation. And also, Kouvakas Iason does not care to play defensively with keeping cards in Arsenal. He does not want to get hit with a Command and Conquer into Pummel now that he no longer has access to Crown of Providence. He wanted to be proactive by developing the Channel Lake Frigid means that it's almost impossible for Anastasios Papagianis to manage to activate Bravo in a still shoot crippling crash, because if he does that, he needs access to all the 5 cards in his hand, so he's not very afraid of what could happen. And then a second crippling crash being used to block, that's a huge victory. That's a huge victory for Kouvakas Iasonas. The commanding core goes through. Probably Anastasios is a bit flattened right now with defense reactions, and he really does not enjoy that. The game is not looking so good for Bravo. Right now he has been disrupted a lot. The Jarl has managed to almost deal with Bravo like he's facing an aggressive deck. Aggressively try to disrupt him, aggressively try to do the full tempo plays, not caring about second cycle, not caring about going to fatigue. He simply wants to keep the pressure up, keep hammering down, and we see a nice quake into the Command and Conquer, the Command and Conquer Pamel at home. Icequake into CNC 9 power Command and Conquer, threatening to discard the arsenal, threatening to annoy Bravo even more with that Icequake. And he knows that Anastasios Papagianis had a really rough time blocking the Command and Conquer last turn. That could only mean a single thing, that the card in his arsenal is a defense reaction. Having a defense reaction here, Anastasios faces a really rough situation now, because most of the time, in order to block for 9, it means you need to commit most of your hand, so all you're doing is hammering for 4. But you're still losing threats. Okay, at least he has a way to block this time for 9, and his turn will not be completely devastated. So Anastasios Papagianis, I think, at this spot needs to maintain his life total, needs to wait patiently for the threats of Jarl to run out, because if the game reaches these later stages, Anastasios Papagianis has way better threats to deal with this matchup. He has the Rouse of the Ancient, the Zealous Beltings, the Pamels, the Crippling Crush, the Starstrucks. We've seen Red Thunder Quake beat to a pulp. He has all these huge attacks, so it's way more unlikely for him to run out of threats compared to Kouvakas Iason running out of threats. So we see an aggressively decompose. I think there is no other Earth card left in the graveyard for Kouvakas Iasonas, so he will need to put an extra Earth card at some point in graveyard if he wants to activate that. So simply hammering for 4 means Kouvakas also can play this game. Kouvakas can also keep some threats for the second cycle, because he can sense now that he can sense that this game will go the long way. This game will not be like the game they played on Swiss. In this game, it feels like he needs to potentially start considering pitch stacking, he needs to potentially considering keeping some threats toward the later stages. But did Kouvakas Iasonas sideboard differently in this game compared to the one we saw in Swiss? Because we haven't seen too many defense reactions, potentially yet, and we haven't seen yet the remembrance that we saw during the Swiss round. So is Kouvakas Iasonas still on the single copy of remembrance in this matchup, or has he decided to side that out because he feels like this game will not go towards the later stages? But the way this game looks, if this game goes the long way, and Kouvakas could potentially run out of threats because he no longer has access to his arms, so the Mangles are not. Mangles are simply a 4-cost card that attacks for 8 with an annoying hit effect. It's not that really strong, dominating 10 power card that's really hard to deal with. That it's the, it's the Starstruck at home from the side of Jarl now that he no longer has access to his arms. So we could potentially see a spot where he runs out of threats. So he could potentially want to grind down Bravo. That would be his endgame win condition if the game goes the long way, to grind down the Bravo with the seed value of Sledge of the Anvil. Okay, and Anastasios decides to simply block with a fancy Sink Below, and simply block with a fancy sim below to do the value line of trying to maintain his life total while keeping the pressure up. But we have seen a lot of threads missing, and that's the first real turn after a long time that Anastasios Papagianis has a breather. And the question is that Bravo is not a traditionally Guardian in general is not traditionally a very aggressive deck, so it's not like the first turn you give Bravo he will have a huge turn to aggressively punish you, but that's exactly what he needs right now. Also, we see a blue disable being thrown with a one resource floating and tunic up. That's very tricky. That's almost command and conquer at home. Disable threatening to remove the arsenal, but this is not a command and conquer, so potentially Kouvakas could have a defense reaction there. But if I'm not mistaken, Kouvakas wanted to set up his next aggressive play in Arsenal. He wasn't looking towards to set up defensively. I don't think he had a defense reaction last turn because he used the defense reaction last turn to efficiently block the 4 power Anethos. So will he get punished now by a Pummel? Because we haven't seen all the 3 copies of Pummel from the Anastasios Papagiannis side yet. Let's see. Kouvakas, considering the possibilities, wanting to count how many Pummels he has, these players having access to full deck lists, he probably knows that there should be 3 copies of Pummel in his deck. Most of the time that's what you expect either way, but it's good to make sure that there are no blue Pummels, there are no weird yellow Pummels or something like that. So he knows that all he has to play around is potentially the 3rd red Pummel that's left in Anastasios Papagiannis' deck. But does he have it? Are we deep enough in the decks that he has digged for the 3rd Pummel yet? Or is it a bit too early and Anastasios is just looking to not waste the tunic for a random Bravo activation for a hit effect that could potentially be nothing if a defense reaction is in the arsenal of Kouvakas Iasonas, or even if a defense reaction is in the hand of Kouvakas Iasonas? Oh, and Kouvakas goes for the no block line. I think out of respect for the Pummel, most likely. He takes the 7 because he wants to take the aggressive turn. He probably didn't care too much about the card he had in his arsenal. And here we see an Enlightened Strike sending a defense reaction to the bottom. Kouvakas really wanted to do the defensive line here. Probably Kouvakas was planning to, if there was a Pummel, to actually, if there was a Pummel to actually discard the card and then use the defense reaction to block and then simply play the felling, where now, since he had the strike, he was like, I'm fine with either way. So that's probably the reason why he decided to go for the no block value of disable. The only problem was with that line was that Anastasios Papagiannis, even though his gameplay has been disrupted, he has been very strong tempo wise. He has been very strong. He has been dealing a lot more damage and he has been very efficient in his blocking compared to Jarl. And this is the card that Iasonas needs to use in order to catch back to this game. These are the cards that the Jarl has access to that Bravo does not. A two card play, Felling of the Crown, that swings for 8, a huge number, and removes a card from the hand of Anastasios Papagiannis, meaning that the worst case scenario, the best case scenario here is that Anastasios only takes 2 damage. But that could potentially mean that he will get a full hand, and we see Tiara Sander from the side of Kouvakas. So he's as well prepared for the later stages of the game. Tiara Sander being the dominant card in the Guardian mirrors towards the later stage of the game when there are no defense reaction left, There are no equipment left. This is the best card to close the game. So actually having access to Tiara Sander and pitching the Tiara Sander could potentially give him a window towards the later stage of the game. Anastasios Papagianis here with a very technical play of simply blocking because again it's a Guardian Mirror match, so you want to be rewarding tempo to your opponent because most of the time they don't have many great ways of using that, and even more Jarl. The worst thing that could happen with the extra cards from Jarl is what? Getting a -1 counter while he removes 2 cards from his deck? I mean, even in that, Anastasios should almost be fine with that interaction. So he doesn't mind rewarding Jarl because he knows there is no drawback to rewarding Jarl with a lot of tempo. Because, and that's the completely different thing compared to Bravo, because when Kouvakas Iasonas attempted to use the same strategy on Anastasios yesterday during the Swiss rounds, we've seen Anastasios hitting back to back with Zealous belting, with and Kouvakas Iasonas goes for the very aggressive line of getting rid of Tunic. He's like, fine, if you're rewarding me infinite tempo, I will pass back tempo back to you. I don't care. I'm getting rid of your Tunic. But that's the huge difference between this deck. Anastasios Papagianis rewards Kouvakas with a full hand, and all Kouvakas Iasonas can do is simply get rid of his Tunic, while Kouvakas Iasonas does the same, and the Zealous belting already hits the chain link. 5 go again with 2 more cards in the hand of Anastasios Papagianis and an extra card in arsenal. The only big win here is that there is no longer a Tunic, so hopefully the ice cards from the Kouvakas Iasonas that will now start really messing with the sequence of the Bravo player. And that's the thing now, that's the magnificence of Zealous belting. Should he play around the pummel? Should he expect another attack? Should he expect a command and conquer? It's sometimes really hard to block, and it's pretty much one of the very few cards that Bravo actually has access to bluffing. But most of the time in these type of matchups, oh, and he does have a pummel! He does have the extender! He does have a way to actually push more damage to him. And not only that, the discard is also super relevant in this matchup because it feels like Jarl has used a lot of cards to do effects that have not impacted the life total too much. And now that Anastasios Papagianis, even though Anastasios has been aggressively blocking, it feels like he probably is ahead on fatigue, and he's definitely ahead of damage, and that's it. Kouvakas Iason has tried to go for the super disruptive play, while Anastasios, all he cared about was the life totals of both players, and a few well-timed pummels again put Anastasios Papagianis in a leading position. There is a huge life lead, but the only question is, will Anastasios Papagianis manage to find the threads? Oh, and that's exactly what we were talking about. Beat to a pulp. Lang text card, 6 cost, 10 power. Exactly the card that he cares about in this matchup. Simply the raw stats in these Guardian Mirrors are so important. The fact that Anastasios Papagianis can use his 3 cards aggressively and threaten a huge attack toward the face of Kouvakas Iasonas means that it's not so easy for Kouvakas to navigate now. And Kouvakas Iasonas starts to go faster and faster towards this position where he won't have the luxury of not blocking. Even if he gets, for instance, a fully fused Okenold, he probably does not have the luxury of getting hit by these huge attacks because Anastasios is just generating so much tempo. So let's see if Kouvakas Iasonas will try to go for the defensive line or will he let this attack go through. So beat to a pulp reads that you can destroy an item if it crashes. destroying equipment with no defense value. And if I'm not mistaken, the flexors are an equipment with no defense value, so the only thing that Anastasios Papagianis would be to get rid of his flexors, which is not super important, but it's not irrelevant either, because towards the later stages of the game, that extra point of 2 block could be the difference between getting a crash effect through or not getting a crash effect through. And Kouvakas go for the full block again. He's like, nope, I'm not giving you. I'm not giving you the tempo. You found a threat. We are already quite deep in this game. I have seen a lot of threats go away, so you will not have a threat next turn. You will not be able to push that amount of damage every single turn. But Anastasios Papagianis has something to say about this. He's like, no, zealous belting again. And we discussed yesterday how important it is for the zealous belting in this matchup. It's effectively almost to the level of importance as a crippling crush. Playing 3 zealous belting compared to them getting discarded or pitched is a huge difference, because pushing 5 damage with a single card is something that Bravo most of the time does not have access to. So if he manages to play more copies of zealous belting, if he manages to play even the 3rd copy of zealous belting in this matchup, it's super important, because the damage is just so much. And if the problem now is that is starting to adapt is that Kouvakas will be now be forced to start being on the defensive, and because he has been very aggressive with the use of his usage of cards with blocking and aggressively trying to disrupt, means that he won't have the deck size required to actually be able to keep up with blocking so much, because that's another very important thing in the Guardian mirrors, that most of the time your deck size is not relevant so much in the fatigue. It's way more relevant whether you are the aggressor or the defender, because if you are the aggressor, even with a smaller deck size, even with not any copies of Remembrance, even if you lose a few threats, when you are the aggressor, you are always trading positively in these type of matchups regarding deck sizes. So the fact here that Anastasios Papagianis has the life lead and is starting to build a deck lead as well could potentially mean that he's leaving no way out for Kouvakas Iasonas. Iasonas at this point really needs to find this premium 2-card plays from his deck. He needs to find another copy of Felling, or he needs Anastasios Papagianis to stumble a turn. But we've already talked about this. It's not so easy for Bravo to miss. We've seen Red Thunderquakes, Pulping, Crippling Crush, Starstruck, Zealous Belting, Rouse of the Ancients, Tira Sunder, Pummel. There are so many threats packed in the Anastasios Papagianis deck. So if Iasonas here wants to take a defensive route and start blocking and waiting, he could potentially be in a spot where he won't have enough life total to block with. Oh, but Kouvakas Iasonas has a Felling of the Crown in his hand, and Anastasios goes for the second Zealous Belting. Anastasios can sense the fact that Iasonas wants to keep cards in his hand, and he's not letting him have any of that. He's pushing, he's pummeling, Zealous Belting again and again and again, and attacking back to back again and again. He's not letting Iasonas keep his premium 2-card hand. And that's pretty much the only card that Iasonas can use to come back to this game. He needs this Felling of the Crown. He needs to play that Felling of the Crown and force the Bravo to use every single card in defense, or take a huge swing and still get disrupted. But right now, in order to do that, he needs to go down to 2 life while Bravo stands on a leading 25 hit points. To 25 life total, it's really hard for a really rough spot for Jarl. Bravo is not giving him any room to take any breather. He's hammering him down. So what Kouvakas can do now? Should he block with the third Felling of the Crown, or should he simply accept the fact that he needs to go down and be dead to any random dominate attack? That's a really hard spot, because, and also remember the decision from the last turn, there is no defense reaction in his arsenal. So it's either he goes down to 2 or he plays Felling. There is no in between. Actually choosing for the safe line, Anastasios Papagianis should be really happy with that. Kouvakas reading that, he trying to identify the winning line here, and he feels that he cannot wait again. He needs to play the Channel Lake Frigid to at least interact with Anastasios, not let him get any breather. And that's the Channel Lake Frigid he used to fuse a few turns earlier to get rid of the tunic, but that's exactly the problem. You sacrifice so much tempo. I mean, Kouvakas Iason sacrificed 2 turns. One turn to set up the -1 counter in Tunic, and another turn, the previous turn, in order to get rid of the Tunic. But all that 3 turns he gave to Anastasios were really punishing, and here, and that's exactly what I'm talking about. That Bravo, a deck with 36 plus blues could potentially not care at all, pitching 3 blues into simply swing for Starstruck, and it's good enough. It doesn't really matter that he won't be able to activate the Dominate because the Kouvakas Iasonas life total is already so low. He doesn't care so much about pushing damage right now. All he cares about is presenting a huge threat, and the sledge is a good thing because Anastasios again put himself in the position he wants to be in. He is the one making the decisions. He is the one that decides whether he wants to play his hand and take the full hit out of the opponent and simply reduce his life total, or if he wants to block and do the effective math played with how many cards. Does he want to block with 1 card? Does he want to block with 2 cards? He has all the options in the world right now, and that's exactly the spot that you want to be in these type of mid-range mirror matches. So we see a clean block here, and that's exactly it, that Anastasios wants to go for the tempo play of simply blocking for 6. He had simply a 4 blue hand, but he was the one making that decision, and that means now that he's super happy with presenting with his opponent, are you going to block my 6 power Anathos? So, but since you committed to cards that you pretty much don't have a real option here, because going down to 1 versus Bravo is really bad, and you're sitting back with Hammer. So, Anastasios Papagianis simply is waiting to get an aggressive enough hand that could potentially help him end the game. And the great thing about that is that it's completely unlikely for Bravo, start of the show, to not have a hand where he could keep 2 cards to at least swing with Anathos. So Anastasios Papagianis here is in a very leading position. I think the only way out right now for Iasonas is for Anastasios Papagianis to break enough to miss a lot of turns here and simply swing with Anathos while the trade, and Kouvakas Iasonas trying to set something up, either getting Tunic up to 3 counters again, swing with Sledge with a single card, arsenaling a threat, and having the time to swing with a threat. But I don't think he has the time to do that. Kouvakas Iasonas loves the spot that the game state is right now, but he's at 4 HP. He has 4 life points remaining, where Anastasios Papagianis has 25 here. So Anastasios Papagianis is super happy with simply trading turns back and forth. We simply trade with Hammer because he knows that, okay, even now, I mean, Iasonas has a fused Okenold, but he doesn't have the life to give in order to maintain his full hand in order to do that. Iasonas wanted this game to be a few turns earlier. Is it potentially too late for him? Or can he actually navigate and find a way to prevent it? No, it looks like he will simply keep trading. He had a Mangle, he had a Okenold, pitching up Tunic, and let's see what he chooses to do. Again, pitching 2 for Hammer, and that's exactly the same thing. Hammering back and forth, and this is it. Is it time? Anastasios Papagianis taking away the only red in his hand. He has a Creeping Crush. Did he get another blue? He got another blue, and you know what that means. It's coming. It's coming. Is the biggest attack in the Bravo Showstopper deck going to hit the board right now? Anastasios Papagianis remembering that Iasonas Kouvakas is still on Stone's responses and he hasn't seen all the copies. Anastasios Papagianis has seen a single copy of Stone's response red that could potentially mean that if he tries to go for the kill and the dominate, Iasonas could potentially fully block this attack. But so he could potentially want to set up Creeping Crash with something else, and he chooses to do that. He chooses to go with a Rouse of the Ancients. He does not want to have to care about the Stone's response. He knows that if he presents 13 points of damage, there is no way Iasonas could hit him back with something like Command and Conquer, and he will ask for his full hand commitment, and next turn with having even more cards, it would mean that there is no way to prevent that Crippling Crush. Very safe line here, rather than try to go for the kill now, making sure that there is no way out, and here it is. Unfortunately, now that he doesn't have the tunic, he cannot do a turn where he goes into... And here it is, dominate, creeping, and GG, that's game! Papagianis does it again! The Creeping Crash, the dominated Creeping Crash, showing everyone. Have you forget about this guy? Have you forget about Bravo, the OG Guardian? Everyone feeling that this is his time is over, that he's just way outclassed from the other Guardians, and Papagianis is not having any of that. He's not having any of that. He's here to show to everyone that Bravo is still a legit play because he's just a heavier deck. He is the deck that packs way more punch compared to all these other mid-range strategies. Ira, a huge problem for Jarl, because Jarl doesn't have the big attacks to go through the defensive cards from Ira. Bravo simply slammed them back to back with Command and Conquer and Pummeling, Crippling Crashes, and he can go above that. Guardian Mirror match. So Jarl has all these interruptive cards, but Bravo again goes above that. He has bigger attacks, more attacks, packs way more punch than the other decks. So an amazing display of a mid-range game, masterfully played by Iasonas as well. He really tried to go for his outs there. He really wanted to try and play more of a proactive approach to try and get rid of his tunic, but his timing was not his timing was a bit off. He didn't have the correct timing to find the cards to actually interact with him, and some pummels really messed him up, and some weird hands that froze him to death. And again, the life total went to the stage. It's pretty much the exact same game. The game state went to the game state where that the game went to this game state that the opponent of Anastasios wanted when the life total of his opponent was super low. Ira starting doing kodachis and attacks to block while blocking when he was at 8 HP. Jarl started trading hammer attacks back and forth when Jarl was at 4 HP. Anastasios has managed to boost the damage to be the super fast deck, and by the time the game stabilizes and reaches to the point where his opponent wants, it's already too late. Now at any stage he can just take some damage, set up a big Guardian arsenal, and next turn threaten a huge amount of damage into lethal. An amazing game, and that probably pushes that pushes Anastasios Papagianis to the finals here. So Anastasios Papagianis is moving to the finals of the Greek Nationals 2025. And the next matchup we're about to see is Andreas Capsalis with Cindra versus Angelos Maxilaris. The defending player, he is back. He was denied his title last year. Angelos Maxilaris is so ready, has his cane hands, has the fires ready, and he's so ready to burn everyone, trying to stop him from claiming the title that he deserves, the title of the Greek National Champ 2025. Will Andreas Capsalis, though, manage to stop him and prevent him from doing that? And will will the Cindra deck as a dominant force in the metagame show its teeth and show why it's such a force to be reckoned with? We will learn all about that in just a moment, where we will be back for the other quarterfinals. So stay tuned. So I'm here now with Iason Kouvakas, the Jarl that tried to claim the title of the Greek national champion. First of all, congratulations
Thank
for
you
the
very
great
much.
run. So, what made you bring Jarl to this type of event? What decks were you expecting to face? How did your Swiss matches go?
It was actually a pretty good meta call, I believe, because I was expecting a lot of Cindras. There were 8. I was expecting a lot of Dios. There were another 5. So I was good into gravy. I was prepared a lot. to defend and just try to break the combos. So it was actually a meta call. I think it went good. The Swiss part, the first part, I went 3-0 into draft. Then for the draft, I was prepared a lot again, so I 3-0'd in the draft, securing the top 8. The second part of the CC didn't go so well. I lost to Bravo again.
Yeah, we said that
Okay,
game.
yeah. Tried a totally different line now. I was trying to go fatigue yesterday. I see that it's not possible, so I tried to aggro down today, cutting down almost all of the D-reacts, going thin 63 deck. And it went much better.
Yeah.
But still, it's bad.
Yeah, so you were not running any copies of Remembrance during this game. You were
Now, no.
No, so you really tried to go for this aggressive line and try to keep up.
I tried to not even play as many D-reacts as I could. I played only the Earth ones and the Stonces. I cut down Sync Belows and Shelters.
Yeah, but yeah, sometimes Bravo packs were really big fans and it's a really hard matchup. Anyway, again, congratulations. Thank you very much for being here. So we will be here for the next round in a very few minutes. See you around.
Yeah.
So we are back. We are bringing you the other semifinals with the Cindra on Andreas Capsalis versus Kano with Angelos Maxilaris. So both of these players have been a new wave to the game, and I'm very excited to see how they're going to perform today. And I'm really excited that they managed to do that. Maxilaris last year came super close to actually claiming the title, but he had to face a Prism in the finals, and that kicked him away. Bravo is actually heading to the finals. So so we have a Cindra versus Kano now that will face off Bravo on the finals. So the Cindra Kano matchup in general is something that's expected to be a really fast matchup. I mean, there is this saying where the game either ends or turn 3 and you either kill the opponent or you die to the arcane. So let's see though that if Andreas Capsalis has packed any extra cards to counter or maybe hate even more the Kano mirror, the Kano matchup. So our players are ready and we will be beginning shortly with the next round. So Angelos Maxilaris has been a one-of-a-kind player, has been one of those players that he started the game with Kano and stayed with Kano ever since. He has tinkered a bit with other decks, but he has been a Kano fan ever since his career at Flesh and Blood. Andreas Capsalis, on the other hand, what can we say about this player? We've witnessed so many games with him there yesterday. He had so many win-and-ins, and apparently, even after all his losses, he managed to sneak into the top 8 at the 8th place, potentially mimicking the story of Alexandros Argyriou during the World Championship Barcelona 2023. We'll see about that. But first, he has to face off one of the final bosses of the Greek nationals, the Kano of Angelos Maxilaris. Does he actually have enough sideboard? So we can see that he runs 0 Spell Void. Andreas Capsalis runs 0 Spell Void, not even the dagger. And Maxilaris Angelos open with an Opt 5. Oh my freaking god. Apparently this is going to be a very quick game. Angelos Maxilaris choosing to go first, obviously, after seeing that Andreas Capsalis is not running any ABs, not running any Spell Void. So he feels like he wants to deal the extra damage. And oh, we see the card of Doom, a Wildfire and a Blazing on the top of the deck of Angelos Maxilaris. Could we potentially have the quickest semifinals ever in the history of this event? So Capsalis has probably the mindset of I want to threaten lethal by turn 2. No matter what happens, I want to threaten lethal by turn 2. So Kano, you have 2 turns to try and kill me before I threaten lethal, because I'm going to go all in. You have no equipment to block, you have nothing that you can do about anything. So all you can do is find the lethal cards during the second turns of the game. And we see that Angelos Maxilaris already has a Wildfire in his hand, and we are witnessing a second Wildfire potentially. A second Wildfire. This game could be over before Andreas Capsalis has not made any legal action yet. Oh my freaking god! And that's the fear, playing a deck with 60 reds that cannot include any arcane barrier, that needs all of its equipment in order to operate. It's not so easy to pack these Spell Voids and all that stuff, and we're looking at a double Wildfire turn potentially. Angelos Maxilaris is right now opting 3 blue cards, a Blazing Aether and a Wildfire. So he could potentially be he could be counting the damage. He has a yellow in his hand, he has another Wildfire that he could put in arsenal. He could potentially, if he wants, simply draw 3 blue cards and be left with 3 blue cards, a yellow card, and simply have lethal on the first turn of Andreas Capsalis' turn. a really rough matchup for Cindra, and that's exactly what you do not want to happen. You want the game to be you want the game to at least reach turn 3. You want to attack with your daggers and flick and cast in your chest at least for a few turns. You don't want the game to be this fast. You want the game to slow down, and Maxilaris Angelos is not having any of that. Maxilaris Angelos is just like, I'm opting for 5, I could potentially have lethal next turn. So if Angelos Maxilaris leaves the 3 blues on top and draws and keeps the yellow in his hand, that means that he will have access to 11 resources. So he needs 6 out of those 11 resources to activate Kano twice, and he needs another 5 resources to activate Boots and play the 2 wildfires. So he could potentially in his next turn go into wildfire, into blazing. That's 4 points of arcane into 8 points of arcane. That's 12 plus another 24. So he has 36 arcane, if I'm not mistaken, if he decides to keep his hand, and if the cards we're looking at here are correct. So the first wildfire comes for 4. The second wildfire comes for another 8. And the blazing will have 12 plus another 12, that's 24. If he can also use his chest to activate the wand, that's 12, 35 plus another 9, that's 14, plus another 28. Oh my god. Okay, he chose not to opt like that. Probably I missed a card there. I don't think he had a blazing, if that's the case. So he draws blue number 1, blue number 2, and blue number 3. And we see pitching a red for a dagger. That's not what Capsalis wants to begin with. That's not how he wants to play his first turn of the game. Activates the chest aggressively. He can feel that something is up now. Andreas should feel that something is up. Kano taking 5 minutes to consider his first opt of the game could mean a lot of things. Oh, the third guard was not a blue. He had a lesson in lava. That's why the resources were not enough to deal that much damage. So Angelos takes another 4, goes down to 25. And Capsalis Andreas is going to trigger Mask of the Pouncing Links to fetch a card. Potentially because he wants to shuffle his deck as well. He saw the Spreading Flames on top of his deck and he doesn't want to draw the Spreading Flames this turn. He wants something that probably has natural go again. And now this is also a great spot because if Angelos Maxilaris chooses to block this card, which we know he probably won't, but if he chooses to block this card, he could potentially flick and then trigger Mask of Momentum with Lava Burst and pop the boots to keep going. Because again, Andreas Capsalis is not looking to play more than a few turns. Andreas Capsalis wants to threaten lethal as quickly as possible. So let's see what Angelos Maxilaris is going to do. So he will take the 4, go down to 21, and that will probably mean that Mask of Momentum is triggering, and oh, there is no Mask of Momentum, oh my god. It's a bit too early. Yeah, he could be running 2 masks. Yeah, obviously he's not running Mask of Momentum. Yeah, he wanted to bring the Lava Burst to keep going. So he knows he needs to commit every single one of his resources But again, probably he wasn't very happy with drawing the Spreading Flames in his next turn, either way, and he wanted to bring the Lava Burst because my guess is that he doesn't have a card that consumes his action point in Arsenal, so he could potentially have an opener, or he's planning to maybe consume the boots and deal even more damage, because it's not like the boots are going to ever cast in the value. Okay, he's flicking. Goes down to 19. And using the boots after to give go again to the Lava Burst, takes 5 going to 14 into an Art of Dragon, but unfortunately there was no fealty token, nothing that could brand him, so there is another 5 damage. So he puts Maxilaris down to 9 on the first turn of the game, but it looks like Maxilaris Angelos wants to hold priority before that happens. So Andreas Capsalis doing the best he can with the hand he got presented with, but Maxilaris now knows that there is no lethal, knows that there are no cards left in the hand of Andreas Capsalis, knows that there are no one-off oasis. Oh, and he has the blazing off the top. Oh god, it's happening. Using Striders to most likely play the Wildfire. And before the Strider is resolved, he wants to activate Kano in order to use the Ragamuffins to draw a card and put a card at the top of his deck. The Ragamuffins resolve, and now Kano will resolve, and it will probably flip. Oh, open the floodgates, yellow! And we know he has a Wildfire. Now the boots are off, and he has the resources to go off here. He knows that there is nothing stopping him from using the wand, giving the +1 arcane, and he already has shown a blazing, so even at worst case scenario, his turn stop, he will deal a huge amount of damage, and he knows he's not threatened by lethal. So he is considering Metacarpus, but I think he will need probably to commit his chest piece if he wants to do that. He is resolving the Metacarpus, so there is an amp 2 coming for 6 arcane. Capsalis takes 6 arcane, and every single attack, every single spell from Kano will be pumped for another 6 arcane damage. Now this is an open the floodgates for 9. So now that there are 9 arcane coming from open the floodgates, and that could potentially mean that's it. The only thing that could save Capsalis is if he gets a bunch of reds, or if he gets... That's already 21 arcane, right? That's 9 plus another 12, that's already 21 arcane. Oh my freaking god, Maxilaris Angelos presents lethal in the first turn of the game. And that simply shows the amount of damage that this deck can actually do. Oh my freaking god, one of the fastest semifinals we have ever witnessed. It's already lethal. Oh my freaking god. We see Angelos Maxilaris with the dominating display of Kano, and that's why Cindras, when you leave home, you should have your arcane barrier and prevention effects with you, because sometimes that's what can happen. So we have Kano actually moving to the finals to face off Bravo.
So a really interesting matchup, a very quick semifinals. So we we will be heading towards the finals pretty soon. We will be witnessing Bravo versus Kano matchup, something we haven't seen for a long time. I mean, we haven't seen Bravo Kano since like a year for now. I mean, it's a matchup that it's not in everyone. I mean, it's a matchup that we haven't seen before. It feels like ages. It's so close. So I will be right back with Andreas Capsalis, the Cindra player, for a quick interview, and then we will be moving towards the final. So stay tuned. Be right back. So I'm here with Andreas Capsalis. First of all, congratulations
Thank you very much, James.
for reaching top four. So, what made you choose to play Cindra towards this event, and how did your Switch games go?
First of all, I chose Cindra because it's a deck I chose since February to play. So I had around 500 games with her, and I felt confident playing with her. And also in this meta, I thought also in the Greek meta that she had a good match as Predators, Assassins, Brutes, Verdans, Gravy, and some not so good matchups against
A lot of Guardians.
A lot
Yeah,
of Guardians.
apparently we had a lot of Guardians.
But I could take the risk. I could take the risk. I just in the Swiss I saw one Jarl that he destroyed me. He completely.
But it was enough to help you reach the semifinals of the
Yes.
Greek National.
Yes.
So again, thanks a lot. That was some great games. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for
And we will be back very soon for the finals. So we are heading towards the grand final. That's all what this weekend has been for. In a very few hours, maybe even less than an hour if we consider the last game, we could have the Greek national champion of 2025. So both of these players have been very exciting. We saw Anastasios Papagianis show a great display of mid-range games into the stream. We've seen him doing very well. He actually, in Swiss rounds, he beat it versus Verdance. He was very prepared. He had a very good game plan into the aggressive decks like Cindra. And he's shown a mastery over this type of gameplay and bringing a bit of a spice in the approach of the more traditional Bravo, or the Bravo we have seen in the last few months. But all this comes down to how much prepared is he for Kano, because Kano is always there to ask the question, and Angelos Maxilaris has already been to the same position last year. Angelos Maxilaris has been sitting in the same position playing for the grand finals of the Greek Nationals 2024, and he managed to lose because he was playing versus a Prism, versus Giorgos Melisakis last year. So will he be able to actually overcome that barrier and actually reach the status and gain the title of Greek National Champion 2025? So I'm really excited to see how these players are going to approach the matchup. It really depends on whether the Kano, how much arcane barrier is the Bravo using. Does he have respected the matchup? Is he running any Oasis? Will the Kano attempt to go for tempo, or will the Kano attempt to set up this huge combo with the now 4 epochs with high seas being legal, so, and try to set up this huge turn with the blazings and the wildfire? But again, the choice of Guardian from Anastasios is that he's playing Bravo. He is playing Bravo. Kano will not have the time to potentially reach second cycle, because at any point of the game, the Bravo player can simply commit an extra card, activate his hero power, and dominate the effect, and force the opponent to either discard hands or force the opponent to remove cards from his hand. But more importantly, trim down the life total of Kano, not giving him the luxury to potentially reach a second cycle. So I don't think that Angelos Maxilaris will have the time or the luxury of setting up for a second cycle game plan. I think he will need to be fast. He will need to set up as many epochs as possible, because we've seen the list from Anastasios Papagianis, and he is running enough AB. He has respected the Kano in the AB regard. He will be pitching a lot to prevent the 3 arcane. So a simple wildfire of the top with a few extra wizard cards will not be enough to threaten lethal like we did with Cindra. Kano will need to set up the energy potions, will need to have a huge board, he needs to have a good card in arsenal, but all these things give Anastasios Papagianis time. And do you know what time means in Anastasios Papagianis? It simply means that he will not, Anastasios Papagianis will not give him the room, most likely, to actually set all these things up. Anastasios Papagianis is packing Zealous, Rouse of the Ancients, Puppets, Crippling Crush, Starstruck, probably not so relevant here. Beat to a Pulp. Beat to a Pulp is actually a card that my guess is that it was mainly focused on Gravy, and the fact that he has Beat to a Pulp means that he could potentially get rid of the boots from Kano or even Ragamuffins, meaning that he actually now packs a bit of interaction. The card Beat to a Pulp gave such an interesting approach to the Guardian card pool, because now versus all these aggressive strategies that in few years back that Guardians really struggled into these types of strategies with equipment and stuff, it's now there is a card packing some good numbers, packing a heavy attack that plays exactly into the game plan that Anastasios Papagianis wants to go to. So I'm really excited to see what will happen. Anastasios Papagianis was 3rd on Swiss, while Angelos Maxilaris was 5th, meaning that
Anastasios will decide who will get the first turn, and that's always a problem when playing versus a Kano, because if you let them have the first turn, that means they get an extra turn to set up. If you don't let them have the first turn and you attack, it's pretty hard to leak damage on that turn, and even if you do, they might top deck a spell. It's still pretty much the same thing, so I don't think who goes first or second is super relevant in this matchup. So potentially in that state, with that mindset, potentially Anastasios Papagianis might choose to go first to pick up Tunic faster, maybe. I think compared to the last game, both players expect this game to get a bit longer. I don't think this game will end as fast as it did with Cindra. I don't think this game will end rapidly like it happened with Cindra. And what Kano needs to do is to buy some time. The number one win condition for Kano is that he needs to set up items. He needs to set up his potions, at least a potion of Deja Vu, and as many epots as possible. I don't think he can go off with less than 2 epots into this matchup. And on the other hand, Anastasios Papagianis wants the exact opposite, wants to force the Kano to try and go off before he has all the time in the world to find the wildfiring arsenal and cleaning his deck and setting up all these items and potentially opting at some point to set up even his next turn. He doesn't want to give time to Kano. On the other hand, we could see a bit of a faster paced game, because if Anastasios Papagianis starts playing super aggressively and activates Dominate every single turn, and that could mean that Angelos could potentially play a more tempo game, like we've seen that before with Kano versus Enigma, for instance, where Kano's played this bit of tempo play style where they simply try to block and leak damage during the opponent's turn. So if Anastasios Papagianis gets to a life total where he is not able to stay with no cards in hand because he's dead and his life total is not enough, that could be another win condition for Angelos Maxilaris, because if you have 0 cards in hand because you want to be aggressive, it doesn't matter if you have 1, 3 or 25 Arcane Barrier. So it's another angle that potentially Angelos Maxilaris could try to tackle in this matchup. So I'm really excited to see. I mean, I remember Angelos last year in Lyon when Enigma was such a popular matchup, and Angelos was really in love with the Waning Moon playstyle of Kano, but I'm guessing he will go for the full traditional combo this time. So the players are almost ready to begin. Let's head to the game. Okay, and here we see a traditional setup from Kano. The equipment hasn't been revealed from Anastasios Papagianis yet, but my guess is that he has 3 Arcane Barrier and a Tunic, and this is the trophy they are playing for, the Greek national title of 2025. Something that they will always keep both in their hearts and mind, and hopefully that will be an opportunity for them to start traveling overboard and potentially go to Philadelphia, meaning that both of these players right now have an invite to participate in the World Championship in Philadelphia later this year. So we see a 3 Arcane Barrier show from Anastasios Papagianis. We see the very fancy Null Rune from Holland. And let's see who chooses to go first. And apparently that's how it is. Anastasios Papagianis chose to go first because he wanted to be at least the aggressor, or try to set up Tunic or something along those lines. So let's see. So Anastasios here probably would love to send a big attack, leave a few resources floating to be open in both situations, but he could also be very aggressive. So no, he's opening with Imposing Visage. He feels like it will not, he feels like his first turn will not be so relevant. So he prefers to set up and get a card advantage to be able to leak damage, and that's good for two things, because first of all, he fetches a show tomorrow, meaning that he can either fetch a Crippling Crush, or he could potentially fetch a Beat to a Pulp, a Thunderquake Red. Okay, Anastasios Papagianis is trying to set up as many resources as possible, but that could potentially leave him open into getting hit by something turn 0, but probably most of the time the top of the deck from Kano is not that threatening, especially during the first few turns where you have no information about what's in the top card of the deck. But if he pitches here for Thunderquake, he could potentially be left out of no resources. The good thing about that is that because Quake triggers at the beginning of the end phase, there is no action window there, so Angelos Maxilaris will need to respond now, meaning that if he chooses to respond, Anastasios could simply prevent the Arcane, could simply not care about that. So, a simple single point of Arcane damage coming towards Anastasios Papagianis, and Anastasios needs to make this decision. Is he getting baited by that 1 point of life in order to not create the 3 Thunderquake tokens from the 3 Seismic Surge tokens, or does he want to maintain his life total? And apparently Anastasios took the 1 damage, he didn't care so much about that. So he activates Kano once more, Potion of Deja Vu, that's a very good hit from Maxilaris Angelos. And we move toward the end step, where during the end step Anastasios Papagianis could simply Quake and create the 3 Seismic Surges. And again, remember, because this is no longer now the action phase, Maxilaris Angelos could no longer respond to the Quake trigger. And that's exactly what's happening. Anastasios Papagianis makes 3 Seismic Surges and is super ready to play a tempo game, apparently. I mean, now with a single card he can attack for 10, so he could potentially use every single other card in his hand to block, or every single other card in his hand to extend, to either do something like Zealous Belting, or to simply activate Brava. But now we see an Open the Floodgates coming for 4, meaning that probably Anastasios will need to respect that he doesn't want the Kano to draw any more cards, and a bit of damage chipping through here is not the end of the world. Most of the time, if you have a blue in your hand, it's not so bad happen, and Angelos is in a really nice spot. He has already set it up 2 potion, and his life total is not threatened at all. Anastasios hasn't made a single attack this game, and Maxilaris Angelos already has 2 items on board. That's a very good position for Kano, but still, things could get ugly really fast, because Anastasios has packed a huge turn here. And that extra card most of the time could mean, again, that Anastasios Papagianis is packing a lot of extenders. Anastasios Papagianis has a lot of ways to actually deal way more damage to Angelos. So it really all comes down on, does he have any way of doing that? He pitched for 2, that's a Zealous Belting. That's a Starstruck. Okay, he goes with the Starstruck actually. And keeping a card in hand, so he prefers to play the more expensive card now that he has the luxury of resources, rather than send the 6 for 10 that has no hit effect. And the Starstruck is pretty much the same card, but it requires more resources, so it could be weird at some point, where now Anastasios is fine because he can keep a card in his hand to prevent any arcane trying to hit back. And the next turn he knows that he can always pitch 2 blue cards and swing for a lot of damage. So Again, this is something we have been discussing today again and again. Anastasios is the one making the decisions in his games, and whenever this happens, it feels like the games go towards Anastasios' way. He's not giving the opponent any room for choices. Angelos Maxilaris is now forced. He does not have the option to block for 9 and develop an item, for instance. He needs to do something with his hand, and if his hand is not interesting, there is pretty much nothing he can do. And Maxilaris being forced into that position probably feels like he doesn't care to commit an extra card, so he simply takes 10 damage. But now that's the third of his life total that's gone. A third of his life total is instantly gone during the second turn of the game, and I don't feel like there is anything too exciting in Angelos' hand. He kept a lot of blues in order to do something. Let's see, he will probably activate Kano a bunch of times, simply sending the 1 arcane before he gives any more information to his opponent. And now it really depends on what Anastasios can do in his turn. If Anastasios can spare a card, he could potentially block here because he could see a full hand out of the Kano, so he could expect that there is more things coming this turn. And that's what's happening. So he prevents the 1 arcane, he doesn't want to give the Kano the free damage. So into Gaze of the Age, that's a very interesting sequencing from Angelos. He doesn't really care about his action point. So all he wants to do here is to try and find something to set up, but we see another Wildfire on the top of his deck, with a Wildfire in Arsenal and the Wildfire at the top of his deck, but it's a weird situation to see a Wildfire on the top of your deck. Angelos probably is not super happy to see that, because he could potentially play a double Wildfire turn with playing Wildfire from Arsenal and Wildfire with Ragamuffins, but the problem is, does he have the resources to do all that? Will he be able to fight the Blazing? Can he threaten lethal without Blazing? That's not an easy sequence, so that's a very, very hard decision for Angelos here, because in theory he wants the Wildfire, it is a combo piece, but he already has that combo piece. The problem though is that in the Guardian matchup you are expecting Command and Conquers, you are expecting Pummels, so there could be scenarios where if he chooses to bottom the Wildfire because he doesn't want to find a second copy of it, and loses the Wildfire he already has in Arsenal, it could potentially mean that he will no longer have the time to find the third copy of Wildfire in his deck. And on the other hand, in general versus 3 AB decks, you want to pack a huge turn. You want to pack a turn where even the 3 arcane barriers is not enough to prevent the onslaught that's coming to you. And the only problem with that is that Angelos does not have enough potions. Or does he now? He found the second potion and now there is a Wildfire on the top. And what is he planning to do? Is he planning to remove the 2 blues, or will he actually attempt to go for a double Wildfire turn? Now he has 2 energy potions, it's not so out of the question to do. He has 2 more potions in his deck, and he really needs a blue here, and he actually got a blue. Angelos Maxilaris has a 3 blue card hand with 2 Wildfires and a Deja Vu potion, but not a lot of exciting gain damage cards with interesting quote-unquote hit effects. So I'm not so sure if Angelos Maxilaris wants to attempt to go off here. On the other hand though, Anastasios has an extender, so Anastasios could potentially, and Anastasios has already used the card defensively this turn. So maybe if he wants to play the Thunderquake, that will mean that he only has a single resource left in his deck, left in his pitch zone. And that's it, only if he has 2 more blues in his hand, because if he doesn't, if he has a red card here and he needs to commit all of the resources to play, Anastasios should be feeling fine. Anastasios should be feeling that there haven't been too many turns yet. So Anastasios could feel confident that I am at 38, I will not play around you having a full kill on the second turn of the game. And that's a very logical assumption, but let's see if Angelos Maxilaris... So, so let's see if Angelos Maxilaris wants to block or he wants to take the risk, because if Anastasios Papagianis pushes for damage, if Anastasios Papagianis tries to go all the way, maybe he will get punished by the double wildfire, because any arcane spell from the top of his deck will mean a lot of damage. The problem is still, is it enough? Even with 2 wildfires, is it enough if he doesn't find the Blazing Aether? Because the first wildfire could be coming for 5, the second one would be coming for 9, and then he has a plus 14 arcane, so he needs to play at least 2 more spells. There is a chance of missing here. So he takes the 5, and Anastasios Papagianis passing. Anastasios Papagianis can smell the blood in the water, can smell that Maxilaris is packing a lot of cards. Angelos Maxilaris is packing a lot of threats, and he wants to take the game slow. He doesn't want to leave himself open with no spells, but Maxilaris instantly punishes him. Angelos Maxilaris gets the opt 5 off the top, meaning that we will at least ask for a card from Anastasios Papagianis' hand. So that 5 arcane here is super relevant. And the thing is that he even opting to means that he knows if he gets a few more blues, he will know that he could potentially keep the wildfire in his hand. Maxilaris also here could be very aggressive, and since Anastasios wants to play a tempo game, and since Anastasios is giving him all the time in the world, maybe Maxilaris could simply play in his own turn the wildfire to simply push 4 more arcane damage. And that's what's he doing. And he gets another potion! The third potion, the Ruby Amulet, hits the board, commits the wildfire. Maxilaris has accomplished that. He already has 4 items by turn 3. He has all the resources he needs to pull off a huge, and he gets another wildfire. Is it enough though? And there is a Kindle as well. Okay, the good thing now, there is a command and conquer heading towards Maxilaris' way. And the bad thing with that is that he is forced to block. Does he have the resources to do some wild things? This will be a very hard turn to think through. So Angelos Maxilaris has a Kindle, a Sonic Boom, he has a Wildfire, so there are many things he could potentially do now. Probably isn't super excited about having a lot of cards that he wants to play, and Sonic Boom being a yellow is not the best case scenario here, so I could totally see a turn where Maxilaris could go a bit on the defensive here and let the game reset, but he probably doesn't want to do that because he doesn't have a great turn to hit back. I mean, he has a Kindle, he has a Wildfire, a blue and a yellow, so it's not like he can block with 2 cards, because that Kindle breaks him now if he wants to play the tempo game of simply blocking 6 and hitting back. It's not so easy. So Angelos Maxilaris though could potentially simply block and give Anastasios another opportunity to attack and simply keep the cards in his hand, but that could lead very quickly into weird situations, because Anastasios already does not have Anastasios has 1 card less during his hand now, and that's an opportunity that Maxilaris created by attacking in his own turn, and next turn he won't be able to do that, so potentially he could not be in the same situation again. The thing is that Angelos Maxilaris has a potion of Deja Vu, so he could potentially do a very big pitch and then use the potion of Deja Vu to reuse these cards. He also has a Kindle. It's a very hard turn for the Kano player. From the Kano side, I would love to be able for him to be able to block and simply attack with a spell in his turn to create the situation again, but all that stops him from doing that is the Kindle. But that Kindle could be the resources he needs to actually pull off a huge turn here and now, because Maxilaris is looking at a very healthy 15 life. So he has a decent amount of time left to try and set up and try to cultivate a way of finding the kill, the correct combinations of cards to find the kill to end the game and claim the title of the Greek national champion 2025. But does he want to block with Blazing? But if he doesn't want with Blazing and won't go for the tempo line, he has a yellow in his hand and he has no information about the top cards of his deck. So here it feels like he's very ahead. It feels like he has set up a very strong board. The problem is, if the next two cards in the top of his deck are red and yellows, he could potentially be forced to commit a lot of resources to simply play a normal hand of Kano. And that's not what he's looking to do in this matchup, because Anastasios Papagianis is at 36 life and he most likely has a blue card in hand throughout the whole game. Anastasios Papagianis is not planning to remove the last blue card in his hand ever. It's really hard from the opponent's side, Anastasios Papagianis, to actually expect what's in the hand of the Kano player. He could probably smell that something is going on. It looks like Maxilaris is planning to block. He does not enjoy the fact that he will be forced to go off with blind information regarding the top of his deck. But again, blocking here means that Oh no! He goes for it! He activates Kano! By overpitching. Ruby Amulet. Four resources. Second Kano activation. One resource floating. And let's see if we go down for the activation of Potion of Deja Vu. And Potion of Deja Vu. Okay. So he puts on top a Sonic Boom. And leaves the two Kano activations to go through. And he has a Sonic Boom and a Gaze the Ages. And an input for 3. Input for 3 into Sonic Boom. Sonic Boom to potentially ask for resources. Into Gaze of the Ages on top. Okay, so here we have the Metacarpus still active. A Gaze of the Ages is being played in order to actually look for blue cards, to make sure that he will have a hand where he will be able to get the resources he needs to go off in his turn. Is it enough though? Is the damage enough from the Kano side to actually end the game? So we have a Sonic Boom with a Metacarpus on the stack and the Gaze of the Ages being played after another wizard card has been played. So opting 2 and opting 2 on top has to be really bad news for Anastasios. So it comes back to his hand and we see a Gaze of the Ages punishing a Blazing Aether. So we have one Blazing Aether already in the banner zone, ready to be played, and then we see a Kindle while still having a card in his hand. So I'm guessing we are going to respond to that. So we see a Ragamuffin is getting the blue we've already seen, putting the last card in the top of our deck. Ragamuffin resolves, and then we resolve the Kindle. Before the Kindle resolves, he wants to use the Gaze of the Ages to find a second Blazing Aether and let the Kindle resolve. And now that this is a blind card though, we don't know about this card, and It's an open the floodgates. Is it an open the floodgates though, blue, yellow, or red? So let's see. There are two wildfires, one resource floating. There is an energy in Epod still active. Maxilaris has a wildfire in Arsenal. So does he have the resources to play the wildfire? So activating the wand, activating the Epod, going up to 2 resources, activating the boots, going down to 1 resource, and pitching the card in his hand. Does he have enough resources? Into wildfire with oh, unfortunately it was a red. Apparently it was a red opened the floodgates, so he didn't get enough resources, but still, this is a wildfire for 7, but it's not a blue card. Anastasios Papagianis did not have a blue card. That could mean a huge amount of damage. So that's 4 damage with wildfire, and Sonic Boom coming for 7 now. So 7 points of damage. If that flips anything, he should be super dead. And another red spell that's coming for another 8 arcane. 8 arcane, and that's game! Oh my freaking god! Angelos Maxilaris manages to do that. Angelos Maxilaris manages to win and claim the title of Greek national champion of 2025. What an amazing game. What an amazing display. So much worth it. So congratulations to Angelos. Congratulations, that was an amazing game. We finally have our Greek national champion. So we will be very shortly back, first with an interview for Anastasios Papagianis, and then of course we will have our very own Greek national champion for 2025, Angelos Maxilaris. So be right back.
So I am here with Anastasios Papagianis, the finalist. So first of all, congratulations
Thank you so much.
For the game. So what made you bring Bravo to this event? What was your thought process for bringing this hero?
So I used to be a Bravo main. It was my first hero in CC, Classic Perspective, and I always had a more aggro side. Like everyone was bringing Bravo with like all the D-reacts, some wobbles, launch responses. I always used to be an aggro player, especially in Dromai meta. I used to try and stomp them, not fatigue them. And now, after I picked up another aggro deck on a while because MST was impossible for Bravo.
Yeah. I mean, I remember you playing Aurora in London.
I picked up Aurora. I had good performance. I was top 32 on Proto London, and locally on my events I was winning a lot. But after she got out, I was waiting for No to get out of the meta as well. And I tried Bravo again, and I saw that on the most represented deck like Cindra, I had a very good matchup. Again, like back-to-back disruptions, good block with armor and some deviants. I could take the tempo, I could keep it up for the whole game, and it was the most represented deck in my opinion. I had a good matchup on Prism, other Guardians, I was feeling very confident, and the only questionable matchup was Gravy. I still find it hard, but I teched like the new card, Battering Ball,
Beat the Bulk,
and because Bravo can dominate, he can't really block it. So if I take the combos out early, I was feeling confident on that matchup as well.
So how prepared were you for Kano?
Not very prepared. Like I ended up bringing the 3AB and one Oasis just in case I was lucky. Because it was and the 3AP was kinda helpful as well, very helpful on my Swiss versus Verdance as well. So no, I wasn't very prepared, but I knew I was probably gonna lose it, but I always wanna have at least a chance on every match.
At least a chance of having the chance of getting the correct card.
Exactly.
So again, congratulations on the position
Thank you
and
so
hope to
much.
see you around. Thanks for being here.
Thank you.
We will be right back with Angelos. And I am here with Angelos Maxilaris, the Greek national champion. Congratulations. Congratulations. So, Kano. Kano, so
Since day one.
Kano since day one. So, what did you? I know that you have been playing Kano pretty much forever. Okay, yeah, you have
3-4
been-
years now, yeah.
Yeah, for forever. So, what did you particularly like in this current meta game to bring Kano compared to some other meta games where I've seen you testing, Verdance or some other decks? Was there anything specific in the tournament you were expecting to play yesterday to do?
I mean,
the local meta isn't that prepared, I think, for K. It wasn't prepared last year. It wasn't prepared this year. But I had the, how can I say it? I wasn't lucky last year because I lost to Prism in the finals.
Yeah, Prism
That
also
happened.
Yeah.
And now 180 came around and I was playing a Bravo in the finals. It was the exact opposite.
Yeah, I mean, and that's the thing. We didn't see many Prisms perform well in this metagame in general. So, did you have any very rough matchups in the Swiss? What was your hardest matchup during Swiss yesterday?
My only loss in Swiss, because I did the 5-1, was Arachne Marionette, who ran AB3 Spell Void 3, but that wasn't the reason I lost. It was a very close game, and it all came down to a blank game. I lost 3 resources seeing Will of Arcana on top.
Yeah, that wasn't enough. Yeah, but that's sometimes bound to happen in big events like this, right? Yeah.
There's that balance, yeah.
Yeah, and so how did you do in draft as well?
You know that I prepare well for draft both last year and this year. This year I didn't have many days to prepare for draft. I only had 3 to 4 full days before Nats happened. So I wasn't feeling that prepared. The only thing that can say saved me, it was that other people were not that prepared.
Okay, I see.
I was more prepared and more experienced in draft than other people and how the heroes played out. I was ready to play any hero of the 3. I would like to play Marlene, but I played Buffy.
It felt like yesterday everyone would prefer to play Marlene, and that ended up being quite a problem.
Yeah.
So, okay, again, congratulations. I'm
Thank
really
you.
happy. Will you consider going to Philadelphia?
That's enough trip. That's enough trip to organize. Let's say right away. Just like that. It's very hard.
So again, congratulations. I'm really happy for you, and thanks for being here. And stay tuned. We will probably move in the PropQuest. I'll call it a day. We will be back very shortly. Thanks for being here, and we will talk to you very soon.